Happy New Year, all you lovely people, and a very, very warm welcome to 2023. It's January the 1st and it's the start of a new year. And so as we look back on 2022, I don't know how you feel about 2022. Maybe you feel the same about last year as you would an audit from SARS, a visit to the dentist, or stubbing your toe. It's just not something you get excited about. And I know for me, 2022, in fact, the last 3 years have been tough years, but especially last year was a tough year. And I also want to come and acknowledge that in the midst of that tough year, I saw God's hand, I saw His provision, I saw His protection, I saw Him work in my life and shape and form me, and I saw Him work in the life of New Gen. And I wouldn't forego that, but I also want to be honest and say that last year was a tough year. And so as you look back on last year, how do you feel about it? We know that Russia invaded Ukraine. We know the Queen passed away. We know it was a tough year for Cyril. We know petrol prices skyrocketed. We know interest rates shot up. We know cost of living went up. You know, taste and see. We took the 250 Rand parcel that we did in 2020 and we did a costing in the start of 2022. It had gone up by 75 Rand, from 250 Rand to nearly 325 Rand. And so it had gone up massively. Cost of living has shot up, and so that has an effect on people. And so besides for those circumstantial things that happen, life is hard. People get sick, people die, we suffer, there's natural disasters, it's tough. And so I wonder how you feel about last year. I wonder how last year was for you. But regardless of that, as we come to today, to the 1st of January, there's something that happens on this day. There's something that happens in this week. There's a sense of excitement. It's a new year. It's a new day. There's a fresh opportunity that seems to just, you know, bubble up and boil inside of us, of like, yeah, this year could be better, of anticipation, of excitement, of a new page turning, of something fresh that God is doing. I don't know how it works itself out, but it is there, and it is something we anticipate and we get excited about. We get so excited about it that we come in and we write New Year's resolutions so that we could come and ensure that this next year is better than the last. And so it's out of this sentiment that we want to, Kaz and I want to take the next 2 weeks. I'll take today, Kaz next week, and just share something of our heart as we've prayed for this year ahead, as we've considered it, that we want to share with you to come and to help ensure that this is a good year going forward. And so I don't know how you're feeling about the year ahead, but I have got this sense, this anticipation that there is something more, that God has something more for me, that God has something more for you, that He's got something more for your family, and that He's got something more for New Gen. And that we can get excited and ambitious around it, that we can plan for it and work towards it. But at the same time, I think we need to be honest and say, you know, this feeling is not unusual. That we have this feeling and we have these moments and we come and we do New Year's resolutions or whatever it is that you do at the start of the year, every year. But how many of those resolutions do you come and fulfill? How many of the years, you know, despite these feelings going forward, are better than the previous years? And the reality is that I think for some of us, we're stuck in the definition of insanity, where we come and we apply ourselves in the same way to the same things and get the same results, and we're disappointed at the end of it. And we come and we do it all over again, and we just get the same results again and again, and we're wondering why it's just not getting better, why our lives aren't getting better, why we aren't stepping into the more of God. And I want to come and I want to just say, before you go and write out your New Year's resolutions, before you get too excited about the year ahead, before you come and you start fighting for the more of God, I wonder if there isn't some stuff we can do a little bit differently as a precursor to those that might just help come and change the results of this year. You know, we come and we look over the years and we see how many New Year's resolutions we've actually achieved, how many years have been better than the ones before. And if we're honest, I don't think we've got such a great success rate there. And there could be a couple of reasons. One of them is a false marker. I think for some of us, we've got a false marker of what success is. Lots of money, no suffering, no one dies, I get through the year and I've got enough money in my pension fund, and enough food in my fridge, whatever it is. Those are false markers. God doesn't promise us the absence of suffering or hardship, that we're not going to get sick and that no one's ever going to die. That's not the God doesn't promise us that. And so we've got to be honest about some of the false markers that we have around success and what a good year looks like. But another one of the challenges, I think, why we also don't come and live in the more that God has for us, is around the preparation work. It's all good and well planting these seeds of New Year's resolutions and ambitions and saying, oh man, I feel like God has more for us. But where are we placing those things? In what soil are we putting that? And maybe that's all the difference. And so as I've been praying, as I've been thinking about this message and this year ahead, I landed on Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 3, where it says, "For thus says the Lord to the men of Judah and Jerusalem, break up your fallow ground and sow not amongst thorns. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord, remove the foreskin of your hearts." And I feel like this is a word that God has given me and for us as a community and as a church, and by virtue of that for you. That as we come and look at it, that God, just as God spoke through Jeremiah to the men of Judah and Jerusalem all those years ago, that God would come and speak to us, to the men and women of New Gen, to the people of New Gen today. And just as he is using a parable, a farming analogy back then to speak to them, God would come and use that same farming analogy to come and speak to us around a spiritual truth and a spiritual formation that God wants to come and do in us, where he's saying, yes, listen to the wisdom of the farmer, but come and apply it so that you might experience a circumcision of your heart. That's a spiritual reality there. And so as we come and we unpack this parable, what is going on here? And so to a farmer, you would know this, that a farmer could come and look at a piece of land, and that land could be lying there and it would be barren. It would not have any kind of seeds, any kind of plants, any kind of work done to it. It would be hard and compact, and it would be full of thorns and weeds and sitting there. But that farmer could look there and he could see on that land the potential that that land has to come and to one day bear a harvest, to bear much wheat, to come and bear olive trees, or God forbid avocado trees, or to come and to have millies, or whatever it might be. That farmer could look at that land, and although it is barren and has nothing on it in this moment in time, he can say it has this potential. And I want to say that as God comes and looks upon our lives, my life, your life, upon us as New Gen, at the entry point of this year, he's looking at it and he's saying, man, there is so much potential there. There is so much potential locked within this community, within those people, within those individuals, within Steph and within you. There is so much potential there. But for many of us, I think that soil, our hearts are lying barren there, and we're not bearing the fruit that God has built within us, the capacity to come and to bear. And so he's saying, break open. Farmer, God, break open the fallow ground. And so the farmer would go to this hard, barren ground that is sitting there compact and hard, that if you take a seed and you throw it on there, the seed is just going to boom, 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 bounce around. A bird's going to come and pick, 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 eat it up and take it away. And that seed will be good for nothing but a meal for a bird. But you need to come and you need to break open that fallow ground. You need to break open that soil and open it up so that the seed can fall deep and begin to harness the nutrients and the life-giving forces locked within the soil, so that when the water falls on there, it goes into the soil and surrounds the seed. We need to come and break open that fallow ground so that the seed can go in. But more than that, that seed will go down, root, sprout, grow up, and as long as there are weeds and thorns growing around there, those thorns and weeds will choke out that plant and inhibit the fruitfulness that it will have. And so it could sprout, but it's going to have its fruitfulness inhibited. And so you need to come, farmer, break open that ground, throw your seeds, remove the weeds, and it will grow a harvest that will be incredibly fruitful. And I feel like this is the word that God would come and give to us today. That before we come and scatter the seeds of our New Year's resolutions and our ambitions and hopes for this year on the soil of our hearts, on the soil of this year, that we need to come and we need to ensure that we do some preparation work. Before you jot down your resolution, you need to come and do some preparation work in your heart. And there are a couple of lessons here that we can come and learn from Jeremiah. And so the first one is, he says, break open the fallow ground. That ground that is barren and hard, come and break it open. It's hard ground, and I believe this is a metaphor for hard hearts. That as we lean into this year ahead, if we're wanting to come and to step into the more that God has for us, that we can come and live in a better year, that even in the midst of trials and tribulations and hardships, we can still see the good of that year, and it can still be a good year. We need to come and tend to the ground of our hearts. And I fear and I worry that for many of us, our New Year's resolutions and our aspirations and goals for this year are going to fall upon hard hearts. And God did not come to give us hard hearts. He came to give us a heart of flesh, a soft heart. And for some of us, we need to deal with this hard heart. You know, we're not born with hard hearts. As a little kid, you don't grow up with a hard heart. It comes over time as you are wounded and as you are hurt. You come and you begin to protect yourself from that happening again. And so you begin to harden your heart. And we can do that before God and before other people. And so I believe that the shout out, before we venture into this year, before we come and throw and scatter the seeds of ambitions for this year to be a good year, we need to, number one, come and deal with our hard hearts. And so why would we have hard hearts? What are some of the reasons that we could come and have a hard heart? And so the first one is cynicism. Some of us are so cynical. And so what is cynicism? Well, it's this disillusionment that we had expectations that it would be like this, and actually it happened like that. And because of that, we're cynical. And we can come and we can begin to project that onto God. You know, when we come to faith, I don't know about you, but I was so excited. I was so enthusiastic. I was filled with such bravado for the gospel and sharing with people and going out. I didn't care what people thought. And as they began to respond differently to me, to shut me down or ignore me or speak about me behind my back, I began to harden my heart because I became cynical as to, this isn't how it's supposed to work out. I'm working for God. I'm doing these things for God. Why aren't these people responding the way they should? And so maybe there's a degree of cynicism in your heart that you had certain expectations of how this Christian life would work out, and it hasn't gone to plan. And because of that, you're disillusioned, you're hurt, and you've hardened your heart. What about bitterness? What about bitterness? You know what bitterness is when someone comes and hurts us. And because they've hurt us, we come and we protect ourselves from them. And one of the ways we protect ourselves from them is to come and to not forgive them. We come and we build up resentment. Someone hurt us, someone wronged us, someone said something about us, or we heard via that they did this. And so we come and we hold up, this wall of protection against them. And really what bitterness is unforgiveness. And the worst version of this is when we hold bitterness against God because of something that happened to us. My mom died, or my father died, or my kid died, or, I had this business and it was taken away from me and it's God's fault. And so because of that, I won't forgive him for that. And so we come and we hold unforgiveness up against other people, or worst of all, against God. And as long as we do that, we're hardening our hearts. What about self-righteousness? Self-righteousness is a classic of hardening our hearts. And so what is self-righteousness? Well, in the core of it, it's really thinking of ourselves more highly than we ought to. And so we've got built within us and within our culture this propensity to come and do everything in our own ability and power. We're fixers, especially us men, we're fixers. And you don't get anything for free, you earn everything. And so why would we come and earn our salvation? And so it bursts this legalism within us, that we come and we legalistically work through our our salvation, our faith. And so we need to come and earn God's favor, really. And so it's dependent upon us. And we don't really need God as much as we need ourselves to make sure that we come and earn His favor. And that form of legalism, that thing of thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to, really comes and hardens our heart before God once again. Or what about entitlement? I preached about this recently, and the context of it was entitlement is this thing inside of us. It's this inherent belief that we are deserving of privileges and special treatment. And so when Jesus' disciples came to Him and said, we want you to do whatever we ask of you to do, we see entitlement at play there. We ask that we can sit at your right and your left when you come into your kingdom. And so if the spirit of the age, and I really think it is entitlement, then the strapline is what the disciples said there. We want you to do whatever we ask of you to do. It's this idea that we deserve certain treatment. I deserve to be treated like this. I deserve this. I deserve that. I deserve this job. I deserve this wife. I deserve this child. I deserve these kinds of rewards, this kind of holiday. It's a form of entitlement. And really, what we do is we come and we tell God what He can and cannot do. And when we come and we live in entitlement, when we come and tell God what He can and cannot do, we harden our hearts, because God doesn't operate within our paradigm and what we ask Him to do. He operates in a completely different paradigm. It's His kingdom paradigm. And when that doesn't line up, our hearts are hard to Him. And so all of this to come and say, folk, number one, I believe there's a call and a shout out before we come and we think of this year ahead, for us to come and do business with our own hearts, where our hearts have become hard, for us to be honest about them. And so I've mentioned cynicism, bitterness, self-righteousness, entitlement. There might be more. Where are your hearts hardened before God and before the things of God? Where are you disillusioned? Where are you bitter? Where do you not trust God? Where will you come and do the bare minimum before God? Where do you need to come and deal with the hardness in your heart, so that your soil, the soil of your heart, can be broken up, and so that the barrenness of your life can begin to be fruitful as God intended it? But you know, it wasn't enough just to come and break open the fallow ground. There's also this call, this shout out, to come and remove the weeds and the thorns. And so it's not enough for us to just come and deal with the bitterness in our hearts, because what will happen is we'll deal with the hard-heartedness that we might have, and we have soft hearts. But if we don't deal with the thorns and the weeds, what we do so will sprout up, grow for a time, but get choked out. And so we see Jesus actually talking about this in the parable of the 4 soils, where there's a sower who sows seeds, one onto a path, one onto rock, one onto thorny ground, and one onto good soil. And it's only the seed that falls on the good soil that grows up and bears a harvest. And so if we can just jump into that parable very quickly and use Jesus's words as He talks about that third soil, the one with the thorny ground, the thorny plants, what his message and His shout out to us is from that. And so if we go to Luke chapter 8, just give me a second to find it. Luke chapter 8, verse 14, Jesus speaking about now this third soil, and He says, "And as for what fell among the thorns, they are those who hear as they go out on their way, though choked up by the cares and the riches and the pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature." And so we can come and have New Year's resolutions, and we can have ambitions and goals for this year, and we can come and cast good seed out upon our hearts and upon this year ahead. But if the ground is hard, that seed will not take. We need to come and break it open. We need to come and soften our hearts before God. But more than that, that seed could, where the ground is broken up, it could come and root and take and sprout and begin to bear fruit. But if there are thorns there, it's going to come and choke it out. And Jesus says those thorns are a metaphor of the challenges, of the desires of the flesh. And He speaks of the worries, the riches, and the pleasures. And so we come and we work it out. The cares is a picture of worries, the riches of wealth, and the pleasures of wants. And so it's worries, wealth, and wants that Jesus is warning us of. And really, this is the world we live in, where we've got all kinds of worries that we're worrying about this or that. And Jesus says, don't worry about these things. Look how God clothes the flowers of the field. Will He not care for you? And we come and we look at wealth. And we look at how wealth comes and traps us and stops us. And how it comes and is the God of this age in many ways. Where we come and we build wealth up, wealth, and we forget that God is our provider. Or when we come and we think of the wants, the pleasures of our flesh, that we want this and we want that. And really, what Jesus is saying here, and what Jeremiah is saying to the people of Jerusalem and Judah, and what God is saying to us today, is we need to come and be mindful and cognizant of the desires of the flesh, of the things of the world around us. And it's not just being cognizant of them, but being ruthless with them and understanding that we are creatures and beings that have been built with affections, that are built to come and worship and to cast those desires, those affections, and that worship onto things around us. And we are at risk at worshiping the flesh and the things of this world, our riches, our wealth, our wants, and to be driven by the cares and the worries that we live in. We need to come and understand that there is only one who is deserving of our worship, of our deepest affections, and that is God. And so we need to come and take stock of those things and not let them rule our lives. Our worries, our wealth, and our wants cannot rule our lives. It has to be God. The loudest voice in our lives has to be God. And so as we venture into this year, can I come and say that our New Year's resolutions are largely superficial, and our dreams and aspirations may just fall on rocky ground unless we come and tend to the soil of our lives, and we come and we soften our hearts and we put the desires of the flesh in its place. And my third kind of landing point is in all of this, where do we go? What do we do? If we are creatures, beings built to worship, where do we go to worship? Well, we go to Jesus. We go to the foot of the cross. And this really is the heart of this message. And this is the heart of the Christian faith. This is the heart of what we do as believers, is we worship Jesus. We love Jesus. We come and we put Jesus in the middle and we orbit around Him. And so if we're going to have any kind of New Year's resolution, if we're going to have any kind of ambition for this year, it's to come and fall more and more in love with Jesus. It's to worship Him and Him alone. It's to trust Him above all else. But so long as our hearts are hardened, we cannot do that. But do you not know that Jesus came to take a heart of stone and to give us a heart of flesh, so that we could connect with Him and live in blissful union with God, with Him? And more than that, He came to call out the false gods of the flesh, of our worries and our wealth and our wants, and to show us that the only one deserving of our true love, of our deepest affections, is God, is Christ alone. And so in this year, I want to encourage you as a starting point to soften your heart and open yourself up to fall in love with Christ and with His kingdom and with the things of God afresh, and to enter into relational bliss, not religious, mundane, mechanized, dry, sterilized, boring tradition, but into relational bliss with Jesus. That's what we're invited to. When we come and we break open the ground, the hard ground of our hearts, and when we come and remove the weeds of our lives, we create a path that straightens out to Jesus, that we can see Him more clearly, that we can love Him more dearly. And I'm telling you now, if you can do this, if you can track with Jesus through the course of this year, if you can love on Him and love Him and enter into relational bliss with Him, it doesn't matter if rain or shine comes, it doesn't matter if this year is a tough year, it will still be a good year. And I'm guaranteeing you, you will step into the more that God has for you. I hope this makes sense. I hope this resonates with you. God bless you in the year ahead. God has more for you, and it starts with Jesus. Can we be in this year like Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, basking in relational bliss with Him. If we do that, and if that is our one thing that we come and get right this year, it will make this year richer than any other year. God bless you all.